Hello, my name is George Clements, Executive Director, and this is our fireside chat for September, and we're pre-taping it for broadcast throughout the week because of COVID restrictions. I want to first of all thank everyone who has submitted questions over the course of the last week. I've got a handful of questions here, and I also have a handful of residents here who are also in attendance. But because of COVID, we've got to be socially distanced, and we've got maybe 8 or 10 residents here as well. So I'll just go ahead and go right into the questions. Question number 1, will the Welcome House be upgraded so that it will allow security to work more comfortably during inclement weather? The answer is yes. But there's a long-term plan and a short-term plan. The long-term plan is to create a permanent Welcome House that will be bigger than the structure that we have there, which is just a rental at this point. It would have a bathroom in it. It would have heating, air conditioning. It would have landscaping around it as well. And in my previous community, we had no Welcome House. We built one. It turned out to be a beautiful structure that a lot of residents appreciated. It adds a level of security. It helps us welcome people as they come. It also helps us navigate vendors, family members, where do I go, where can I park? Those types of questions can all be addressed right there at the Welcome House. So that's the long-term plan. The short-term plan is I have requested a larger rental to better accommodate our staff out there. I have the same concerns, and I brought this up in the middle of the summer when the heat was excessive, and we had fans out there, and we were bringing cold drinks and things like that out there for them. I said they could wear shorts. I wanted them to be comfortable as they can be. But now it's going to be getting colder, so we've got the same types of concerns about extreme weather. So I have requested a larger rental unit, something that can better accommodate our residents for the short term. The timing on the long-term plan is, I really don't know. Planning has begun on it. An engineer is engaged, and we're doing 3 of these Welcome Houses at the same time, essentially. So Fairhaven, Buckingham's Choice, these other Intergrace communities, we're kind of doing it all together. So I'm not exactly sure of the timing. I will let everyone know when I have specifics on that. I'd love to tell you it's going to be done by the end of March of next year, but I don't know that's going to be the case. I'm anticipating something next year for a completed project, but we'll see. I really don't know yet. But
George,
hopefully that answers that question. I'm sorry, what?
Can I ask a question about what you're trying to plan? That me that we could get a shed with windows in it and have it put down closer to Dutchman's Lane with 1 lane coming in, 1 lane coming out, where they do not have to leave the building to go out there and take temperatures. Particularly, they'll have gloves on. It will be hard to be pushing buttons with gloves on when the cold weather comes. You can purchase a shed or have one built with windows, sliding windows in it, that would make ingress and egress much easier. I imagine you're probably paying $400 or $500 a month for that thing that's out there now.
Yeah.
You know, that would make it so they could stay in the shed where it's warm instead of have to keep coming in and out for every car that comes.
Yeah.
Just, you know.
So the comment is get a shed instead of the little booth that we essentially have and have it closer to Dutchman's Lane. The positioning of where this is right now has actually been established by our real estate group. They wanted to have it there because of the intersection of all those roads right there. I can't have it, and the permanent Welcome House will not be out by Dutchman's Lane. You've got to have a certain amount of space for cars to line up if they were to come in and stop. And there's regulations on that. It might be 5, 6, 7 cars. I'm not sure what it is. But the permanent structure would not be out by Dutchman's Lane. It would probably be in the middle between Dutchman's Lane and where it currently is now, somewhere in the middle, to allow for proper, the number of cars that could line up and not be lining up out on Dutchman's Lane, which would be dangerous.
Yeah.
But the suggestion of a larger building, that's my thought as well. whether it's a shed or something like that. I don't actually, I've requested it a couple of times, and I'm probably going to be stuck with what I get. But we'll see. I agree with you. I think a larger building like that would be helpful. All right, with that, I'll move on here. If residents personally purchase plants or bulbs for their yards, will the maintenance staff plant them, or will the planting be done by the Good Life landscaping staff? So at this time, when we get those requests, we're asking Good Life to take care of those requests. My maintenance staff does a lot of things, and just this might be helpful to understand. What do they do? So they're doing all the preventative maintenance throughout the community. So we need to change air filters in every apartment and every cottage. They're doing that. Every time something breaks, they're on it. They're also renovating apartments or cottages as needed when we turn something around. If something becomes vacant and then a new resident would be coming in. So they're doing all those types of things. It's a little bit easier for us to let our landscaper that we already have engaged to help with these things. Usually they're minor things anyway. So right now, if you have a request for that kind of help, just put a work request in at the front desk, and then they will contact George, the head of maintenance, George Jenkins, as well as the landscaper, and George will sort of coordinate between the resident and our landscaping company. Good Life is who we're currently using to get that done. Yes, question?
Is it preferable to put your request in directly to the front desk or through the portal?
The portal's fine too.
Okay.
A lot of people don't know how to use the portal, so that's why I usually say the front desk. But yeah, just put a work request in when you have a landscaping request, and it'll get taken care of. It'll be picked up by George Jenkins, who will work with the landscaper to try to get it done for you. Yeah, the portal's a great way to put in a work request. Okay, I'll move on then. Related to the last question, is there a budget for beautifying our grounds? First impressions are important, and while some improvements have been made, much more needs to be done. So, good question. There is something of a budget I have a landscaping budget for our grounds. It's not huge. At the same time, I recognize that I think we have some catching up to do, not just only in the landscaping area, but in many areas on our campus. I just feel like things have been somewhat neglected for various reasons over the years, and so we're kind of in a catch-up mode, and that's true for landscaping. So this year we have done actually a lot of things. There was a lot of dead trees or dying trees that we removed, particularly around Marion Court, which is around that side of the community over there. And then we replaced those with new trees, new shrubs, some new landscaping. But there were also other areas on Davis Lane, in front by the apartments. There's a number of trees that have been taken out because they were dying. There's been some pruning that hadn't happened in a while that needed to happen. There were a lot of, related to landscaping, I'm thinking of landscaping as also building and grounds. There were some old antennas on the roof that weren't being used anymore. So there were some old TV antennas. There's one left that is being used, but the others I had taken down. There was actually a 40-foot tower that I had taken down that hadn't been used in many years. Those are just kind of eyesores, and you don't really sometimes realize that until they're gone, and you're like, oh, it actually looks okay over there. But the eyesores are gone, but hopefully you don't see those anymore. We replaced a lot of the directional traffic signs on the community that were bent, faded, crooked, and those have been replaced with new signs. So we have been doing a lot. There's also some grading that was done. We had some flooding issues, not in a unit or a home, but on the grounds. In 3 different places on here, we had some flooding issues that we regraded to correct those issues. So we have been doing some things. I would love it if whoever sent this question in gave me some specifics, like, well, what I was thinking of was over by this cottage, there's this area or that area, whatever. If you have ideas, specific ideas, in particular, let us know, because we do want to hear what your ideas are. We do respond to resident requests. We can't always do everything, or we can't always do it now. You know, I do have limited funds and limited budget, but we'd like to do what we can. I see our landscaping and grounds as an evolving process. It's going to take years for us to, you know, you can't always just do it all in 1 year. But as the years go on, we're going to keep enhancing and enhancing. The Welcome House is an example of that. I would love to really beautify the front entrance. And the person who sent in this question mentioned first impressions. I believe that as you first come into a campus, that is a critical point of a first impression. And so I believe we could create a Welcome House that's attractive with landscaping around it, probably redo our monument sign as part of that area, and just make that whole area even more attractive. But that's probably going to happen by the spring, you know, but I don't have the exact schedule on that. Question?
Well, that was my question. Thank you for answering it. I think that's extremely important. As I said, first impression.
Yes.
We need to really beef things up. And I do realize that things have been done, but I just feel, as you said, George, we have a long way to go. And
Right.
It's an evolving process, as you said.
Right, right. Okay, well, Ellie actually asked that question, and now I know. Good question. Let's see, looking forward to the new resident handbook, when will that be completed? So I would anticipate that being completed by the end of this year. And that sounds like a long ways away, but let me explain the process and why I say that. The process, it's actually a pretty monumental process to redo this document. It's an important document for residents, but it's incorporating, it's transitioning from Integrace into Acts, and there's change there. You know, a lot of things are happening around this community right now, and a lot of it's still in the background, but we are upgrading systems, and we are you know, planning other enhancements like the Welcome House, for instance. So like the Welcome House is a whole procedure that I would want to have in our handbook. What is the Welcome House? How does it work? Is there a tag on your car? Where do you get that tag? All those types of questions. But we're not there yet, so I don't have it in the handbook yet. We just revised our trash and recycling program, and I wanted to make sure that gets in the handbook, because that's sort of a new process. Our culinary process, we've had some snags. That what I mean is Axe has transitioned to a new point of sale system that is to allow you to have a card to swipe your card for your meal. And that system hasn't been working correctly with this new vendor that Axe acquired. So there's some issues with that. But I would like to have that system in the handbook, but I don't have it yet. We should be getting exterior cards for exterior doors for the main buildings. So, and it should be this, the plan is actually to have the same card as that you have for culinary. If you want to have a meal there, they just scan your card. You would also just use the same card to scan by the door, one of our exterior doors to come in. They're easier to use than keys, actually, and the way these card readers go, by the way, is I could just hold my wallet up and I don't even have to get the card out. And I've seen people hold a purse up and it'll just unlock the door for you. But I don't have that system in yet. So I anticipate getting that this fall, and I will communicate that out when it's imminent and I can have details to share with you. But it's for these reasons, these are significant things that should be in there. That's why I'm thinking it's probably going to be closer to the end of the year. It may be that we just need to get it out. We can't wait indefinitely for some of these things, and then we'll just put a little addendum out and add that to the book, or maybe we have to reprint the book. But I'm trying to avoid that, and that's why a little bit of a delay there. The process has been, we revised it to a point, we handed it to residents, a number of residents, this is kind of through the resident association, a number of residents reviewed it, had feedback on it, which we appreciate, and we're right now in the process of incorporating that feedback into the book. then my next step would be to hand it back to residents. I'd hand it back to the resident association and said, could you have a few residents, maybe some of the same ones who already even have gone through it, take another look at it if you would, and I'd like to get some feedback again as we move through the process. So that's kind of the process, and that's sort of the timeline. Yes, question?
With regard to the cards that we don't have yet, how do we ascertain how many meals remain in the month? Because some of us have missed some meals.
So the question is, if you want to check how many meals you have in your meal plan, how do you do that? So you're going to have to call the culinary director, or you could call Carol, who is the administrative person for culinary, or you can call the front desk and they can connect you with the right person. So they have to check for you. That's the process right now. Okay, I will move on then. Can there be more handicap parking spaces by the apartments? So I've briefly talked with George Jenkins, the maintenance director, about that, and we're going to take a closer look to see what we can do there in terms of handicap parking by the apartments. That's my quick answer on that. What are the new wellness office hours and why are they changing? The wellness office is designed to be like a physician's office, which is generally open Monday through Friday. And these are for routine appointments or whatever appointments someone sets. But it's not, those offices are usually closed on the weekends. And that's really how our nurse practitioner office should run as well. So we are, so starting October 3rd and 4th, which is a weekend, because they have had weekend hours in addition to Monday through Friday, we will stop having the weekend hours October 3rd and 4th. But that doesn't mean if someone has a medical emergency or needs help, they can't get it. So on the weekends, and this is what you would do off hours anyway, if there's a problem, just use your alert button. And nursing will respond 24/7, and security will also respond 24/7. And then they can address things from there. But the idea is for routine appointments, that really can happen Monday through Friday. That's kind of the standard way these offices are usually run, so we're just converting to that. Any questions about that? Wellness office? Okay. Is there an update on how we can provide additional space for activities such as a game room and art or craft space? So, good question. And when I first came here about 8 months ago, this was one of the first things that were brought to my attention. We'd like some more, a room for a game room if nothing else, but we obviously need more amenities. I'm totally on board with that. I completely agree, but it's easier said than done. The problem we have here at Bailey Chase is there's just not much room. And it's so to say, well, let's put something over here. Well, that means we would need whatever's there now has to move someplace else. And where do you put that? And it really becomes almost a shell game of you have to put this here, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here, and it's complicated. So long-term plan, a master plan is being developed as we speak, and I don't know what that result's going to be, and I can't wait to get it because I can't wait to share it with you when we have it. But the master plan will allow for properly built clubhouse, pool, amenities, and these types of spaces. But these are the kinds of things that probably need to be built, and where do you build them? And is there something there now that would need to move? These are all bigger, larger questions that are realistically, if we have a wonderful plan, that if I had a wonderful plan emailed to me today, realistically, it's still probably a couple of years before anyone can walk into that pool and start using it, or walk into that game room and start using it. Because it all has to be planned, it has to be bid out, it has to be built, there's permitting, it's a long process. So can we find some space in the meantime? And I've been working with our resident association. I've been working with Bob Harvey in particular, who has a passion for this and has a lot of ideas. So he and I have been exchanging a lot of ideas, and I think we have a couple of potential solutions that that we're not finalized on yet. So, but I think my guess, and it's a guess, that I would have something for you by the end of the year, some sort of game room. But it's a guess. I could be off by a month or two depending on how the process goes, because I'm setting a goal on something that hasn't even been completely developed yet. So, but in the conversations I'm having, I'm with our real estate department, with residents, and what I think maybe is we could maybe do. I'm kind of optimistic sooner rather than later we can come up with something. Yes, sir.
Yeah. You can't make a silk purse out of a cow's ear. I mean, we just don't have the space. I don't see how you can, you can't do any of that with the present space we have, can you?
So, you're right.
It's not, you certainly aren't robbing Paul to pay Pete. I mean, I don't see how it can ever work.
So where I'm finding some space is some of our apartments are really studio size apartments and too small to really sell in today's market. So if I could take some of that space or and repurpose it, that's kind of what I'm looking at as a possibility. So when I have more of a plan, I'd love to share it with everyone. I just don't have enough of a plan to even throw out a bunch of details that are gonna be obsolete in 3 weeks. So okay. Okay, after a request by a resident, I noticed that the door in the physical therapy and occupational therapy room is being automated. What about the door to the sunroom off the patio? So we did have some residents request have an automated door to our occupational therapy room. And also the double doors that are outside of the auditorium from the patio, those doors are currently not automated. But if we could have them automated where you push the button and they open for you, that can be really helpful to residents in both of those places. It was also mentioned by this resident about how the door that goes into the sunroom from the patio opens a certain amount, but not all the way. And it's because, I've already looked at it, it's because the way the concrete is down there, the door is hitting the concrete and stopping at a certain point. So I am looking at, and I totally agree with these changes. So I'm looking at getting those doors automated. It's a process. It's not an inexpensive process, but we're having that bid out right now to get some quotes on getting those doors automated. And then the door going into the sunroom, that's more complicated because related to that issue, and my next question actually is related to that, about apparently a resident has noticed that water pools there and when we get a big rain, and maybe, I haven't really seen this myself, but they're saying that if water's pooling there and then you're tracking that into the sunroom, it could get slippery, and what could we do about that?
Absolutely.
So we're looking at that. So I would like to try to fix that door issue, but I've got to have, that one's more complicated. It's going to take more time, but I have someone looking at that, and we'll see what we can do on those two fronts. So, yes, ma'am.
Would the new card reader be on the button that you press to open the door?
Yes, it should be, yes.
Excellent.
If you didn't hear that, the question was that sunroom door, would the card reader be there for that new exterior card system? And the answer is yes. Okay. Next question. The therapy room is poorly organized space-wise, as well as too small for the needed equipment. Are efforts being made to alleviate this problem? So, as we've been talking about, we are space challenged here, and to it's not like we can say, oh, well, let's just add another 100 square feet to this room so we have more room. We can't do that. So we have to work with what we have, at least in the short term. Most therapy departments are in one location. You usually would not have a separate occupational therapy and a separate physical therapy space. Usually they're in one space. So we have talked about doing that here. And as I mentioned before, it's the shell game thing. Can you do this? Can you do that? And so we have, we've talked about some plans and some ideas there. We would like to ultimately do that. Right now with COVID, it's actually having a reverse effect on us, particularly therapy-wise. What I mean is, to protect people from COVID, and as we start doing more therapy and having more residents here, how do we keep people appropriately safe? The current plan is to actually have separate therapy spaces for separate populations, just to help to not have any kind of cross commingling there, and it's a safer, it's a level of safety. If you have certain staff dedicated to one area, if you have a staff person who is working in Willowbrook Court, Oak Ridge Terrace, independent living, well, if that person ever got COVID, that's quite a risk, right? This person is all over the place. What we try to do is limit our staff in certain areas. It's just one more level of precautions that we can take. It's kind of a standard best practice. So as we do that, therapy is becoming a little bit, we want to have actually another therapy space. So I may take an unused independent living apartment for some therapy needs on a temporary basis. So ultimately, we'll probably get all our therapy in one place, and it should be adequately spaced, but in the short term, we're going to have to make do with what we've got. So, all right, page 3. What is the update on the new trash can and recycling system? So we have been test driving this now for a couple of weeks. We've had some resident feedback. We've already realized in some places where we need additional recycling cans, and we've had some discussions about, well, maybe we really don't want to have these cans in this part of our cul-de-sac, for instance. Maybe it should be over there. I also have, so we're making some of these tweaks. We haven't moved cans yet, but the discussions are happening. And I have the representative from Republic actually coming here on Monday, and we're gonna. He's also going to be bringing some better bins. Some of the bins were missing handles and things like that. They told us we were going to get new bins. That didn't turn out to be true. So we've been talking to them about that. They're bringing us some better bins as well, and so we should be getting those. And I asked the rep to actually come here, because we've been talking, and I said, hey, you need to come here and you need to see what we're talking about, So they're coming on Monday. George Jenkins and I are going to meet with him, and we'll go through some things. I also requested a schedule in advance when there are holidays and the pickup times will be altered. Well, we want to know that. I want to know that in advance so we can let you know that in advance. And they didn't tell us that when it came to Labor Day. So we started right at Labor Day, and immediately the schedule was different from what they had told us. They're getting us a schedule to help so we can, we can all be on the same page about that. What I'd like to do as well is for George Jenkins and I to, what we did as we went around to all the cottages and Davis Lane cottages and villas as well, and we had a conversation with residents to say, here's the process. I want to do that again as sort of a follow-up, and let's talk about it again, and how's it going, and what tweaks do we need to make. Once we sort of have all these tweaks in place, that's when I want to go ahead and put some fencing around these things and some landscaping where we think that's appropriate. So all along I've said we're going to test drive it for a month or two, and then we will make the tweaks. I don't want to put fencing and put it in a place, landscape and do everything and make it look pretty, only to have people tell me, well, we need another recycling bin and we really want it over there, That's why we're going through a little bit of a transition time first. But that's the update there. Sometimes I think the food could be more consistent. Can anything be done? So this is where I would love to have more detail on a question like this, because I don't know. I mean, we can guess what someone might be talking about, but are you talking about the carrots on Wednesday night and then the carrots again on Friday? or what? I don't know. And are you talking about the dining room, the Chesapeake dining room, or are we talking about the buffet line that we have? Because they're different, and I don't know. It's hard for us to address these types of questions without more detail. But I will say we've had an overwhelming amount of positive feedback in the Chesapeake dining room with the new menus that we have there and the service that we have there going on. So I'm guessing maybe this is from the buffet line. I'm not sure. But what Steve Newcomb and I have talked about this. He's the culinary director, and he's going to implement a bit of a program to solicit feedback from residents on how the meals are going. We do have the comment cards, but we're not supposed to have them on the tables in the dining room, and they're easily overlooked by the door, and you'd have to bring your own pen because we don't want people sharing pens and pencils. We're just gonna do something different. We're gonna call residents on the after the meal is the plan. Not everyone, but just sort of maybe a random 5 people or so, several times over the course of the week, and ask how it's going, and different people and different calls, and try to get some feedback that way. You're always welcome to give us feedback at any time, of course. But this will be a way, maybe while it's still on your mind, like the same night that you might have had a meal, to just kind of ask how things are going. So Steve's gonna start doing that, and hopefully get some more detail and feedback on things on the culinary program. Okay. Okay, my last question is, what is Olympiacs? So hopefully you've heard of Olympiacs. So here's the brief history. Olympiacs is an annual event in each region within ACTS, and it's a resident event, and it's sort of it's a competition. And we have, every year we come up with competitions or athletic events that are appropriate for our residents. Residents actually give us some input on this, and we've had some that are popular year after year, such as a walking relay, or we do pool relays, we do shuffleboard, cornhole, billiards, and there's a host of other ones, and they're not always the same every year. And usually it's hosted by one of the communities within a region. This year it would have been Heron Point hosting Olympiacs. And then each community would take a busload of athletes and some cheerleaders, and they would go to the community, and so all these different communities would congregate in one place. And it tends to be a pretty big deal. We usually have a mascot, we would have our team colors and our cheerleaders, and maybe I've seen some communities come up with their own cheer, and they take it pretty seriously, and we compete. And they compete for medals. So it's gold, silver, and bronze medals. There's opening ceremonies. Someone sings the national anthem. Someone brings in a torch. It's not a real torch, but and you know, so it's a fun thing to do. And then at the end we have a really nice lunch and closing ceremonies, and medals are awarded. And it's a pretty fun day. And I've been to many of these. Last year, Bailey Chase got to participate for the first time in this, and so maybe some of you were part of that and got to see that, and that's great. This year, because of COVID, unfortunately, everything is different. Instead of being one day, it's going to be sort of virtual events over the course of 2 weeks. So the dates on this is going to be October 5th through October 16th. That's the day of the opening ceremonies and the closing ceremonies. We're going to broadcast those. We're still trying to get the details on how the region wants to do this, but I think we would broadcast those events here in this room, and we couldn't have the whole community here. So we'll have to figure that out. It'd probably be something that we could broadcast later on Channel 900 as well. And then there's 9 events this year. So there is, and these are different events than we usually would have because of COVID. So there's a trivia event, there's a spelling bee, and the spelling bee, by the way, I think would be virtual, and the trivia event with the other communities online, so to speak, all at the same time. And so you are kind of competing against each other, but you're doing it virtually. Officials are going to be staff. There's a timed jigsaw puzzle competition. There's a paper airplane competition where I think you've got 10 minutes to make an airplane, and whoever gets the longest distance would win.
They had to get creative.
Yeah, yeah. There's a minute to win it where you've got to sort and count M&Ms in 1 minute. There's an engineering challenge where you're taking marshmallows and toothpicks and you're making the highest structure in a certain amount of time. There's a cornhole competition, there's a golf putt competition, and there's a walking relay. So these will be done within each community and timed or scored as appropriately, and then those scores or times would then be compared with the other communities, is how that would work. So our fitness director is really the point person for this, and Susan Covey is looking for a few more people to help. I know she needs someone, she said, for the engineering challenge, and I think the minute to win it, and the jigsaw competition, and maybe the paper airplane competition too. So I'm putting this out there to everyone. It's a lot of fun. If you want to participate, please contact Susan and she can give you more details. I think she has some tryouts for some things and some practices, and she can work with you to make that happen. My plan would be for all the athletes, we would, at the end of the competition, we'll have a nice lunch together because we can't have the big lunch, but we'll have our own lunch. And we'll just kind of celebrate, what we've been able to accomplish, and hopefully we can win some gold.
We won one last year.
Susan tells me that a mascot has been picked, and it's the Rays, the Bailey Chase Rays. Manor House already has Osprey. Heron Point already has the Blue Crab. Susan talked with some residents and they came up with the Rays. And I do know, I go fishing in the Chesapeake Bay sometimes, and we catch rays sometimes, and they are strong. They're graceful and they're strong, and when they are near the surface and their tips are up, they look like sharks. But I've caught a few rays, and they always break my line, and they're strong. So rays, and then I think the team color is purple. So, any questions about Olympiacs?
It really is fun because we went last year, just a few of us, and they do opening ceremonies, closing ceremonies. It is a big deal.
Yeah.
Wonderful lunch, and we won a gold medal.
Did you win the gold medal?
Yes.
Ellie's reminding me that she won a gold medal. She brought home the gold. So let's do it again.
Was it Chris?
No, Betty Glasgow.
Oh, was Betty?
Oh, okay. The team. You guys were a team. Betty Glasgow and Ellie Truffer brought home the gold.
Yep.
Love it.
We're
Love
hoping
it.
for one with this year too.
Let's do it again. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Yes.
George, I'd like to go over a common sense situation here. Our residents have their children or a visitor come in. They come in at 6 o'clock in the morning, they leave 11 o'clock at night, and then they can't stay overnight. You also have a situation that are coming up here. If one of our residents goes into the hospital for maybe an appendectomy, and their children or some caregiver in their family wants to stay with them, they're not allowed to. I just don't think that is a common sense solution to this. I think that to force these people to go to a hotel with $500 a weekend isn't right. And I think that that should be looked at and let these people have their relatives come and stay with them if there is a purpose in it.
Good questions. The question is, we're in phase 2.0 right now in our reopening of Axe and Bailey Chase. And in phase 2.0, we have allowed visitors or family members to come to, say, your independent living apartment, can be there for 12 hours, but not spend the night. And when they don't spend the night, and a lot of people come from out of town and hours and states away, that forces someone to either just leave early or take a hotel, which there's a cost there. I agree that we definitely want to have people be able to stay overnight. I've brought this up, I've raised it, other executive directors have raised it. It's all decided by our COVID task force, who are, have the tough job of trying to keep 12,000 residents safe across all of our campuses, as well as help them have a quality of life as well, and find that balance. And each state is different, each region or area, counties can be different, and the virus is constantly evolving, and so it's a very tough job, and literally every day of the week they are meeting and they are talking about it. So they came up with a 2.5 phase, which was not part of the original plan, but recognizing that things like this are sort of common sense and should happen, we should make some accommodations, and we should evolve too a little bit. So they came up with phase 2.5, and we were about to go to phase 2.5, which would allow resident families to stay overnight. When we had our first resident case here, and so we had a resident case here. I had 2 staff members also test positive, one in Oak Ridge Terrace, one in independent living, in Wilbur Court. And then we also had outbreaks in some of the surrounding communities, like Peak down the road had a major outbreak, and if you've read about it in the paper at all, several people have died. They thought they had a handle on it. They had a second outbreak. It's very real, and it's very close. So we erred on the side of caution, and I know if someone's in your house all day long, what's the difference if they stay overnight? But there is a sense of it's an additional level of safety if they're, maybe not using the shower and not using some sinks and not sleeping in a bed. That's the thinking, whether we agree with it or not, but that's the thought on it. I'm hoping we can get close to, we're getting closer to 2.5. We're clear right now, there's no COVID in our community at all. And I think the COVID task force would want to wait a couple of weeks and ensure that. We continue to do testing with our staff. We decided not to do community-wide testing for all residents in September. I don't know about October yet. But if we can remain clear, I believe we can move to 2.5 and we can get over that. That's the best I can tell you right now. Yes?
On the common sense side, it seems to me far riskier for the family member to be in a hotel and then come back to visit, because they had the opportunity to be exposed. So I don't,
Right.
you have to put some weight on that as well.
So that's a good point. The point is, if someone's actually leaving the community and going to a whole nother facility or building like a hotel, could they not pick something up there and then bring it back? Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
We have quite a few members of our family, George, in Arlington, Virginia, a 2-hour drive here. So it's been a rather major thing. We don't want to ask them to come 2 hours here and 2 hours back in one day.
Right.
And when you think about it, hopefully they're all using a sink or anything else during a day, not a shower perhaps, but the common sense thing is just where, if we could concentrate more on that, even than the rules, in that they would be safer, just as that comment is. It makes common sense. And it makes common sense, well, the whole thing, just if we could think about that one angle. I think there are several people, several families that would be majorly affected by a positive change here, emotionally as well as physically.
Right. So there was another comment echoing some of the other common sense ideas. We feel like it's time to let family members stay overnight. So I don't disagree with you. So I'm advocating for moving to 2.5 as soon as we can,
Thanks.
so we can get there.
George, is it your decision to make, or do you have to have someone else hire? Who makes that decision? I mean, somebody's just not thinking out of the box on this particular situation. I mean, we send these people to the hotel, then they come back the next day to visit. That it gives them more opportunity to get COVID than if they stay overnight, because they came in clean. What happened overnight that makes it different? You said about going into the shower or falling. That has nothing to do with COVID. If they were here on just a regular visit without COVID, that same situation exists. They could go into the shower and fall, or anything like that could happen. So, I mean, it just, you know, I just can't get it in my mind that we cannot look at this on an individual case, particularly with people coming out of state to visit their families here, and make an exception to those rules.
Yeah, the question is, who's making that decision on whether we can have people stay overnight or family members stay overnight or not? That decision is being made by the COVID task force, not by me. The way we have it working in ACTS is executive directors like myself would say, we're COVID free. Here in Talbot County, we don't have that many cases compared to, say, Prince George's County in the state of Maryland and things like that. In other words, it's up to me to make the case for changes. And I present that to the task force, which I already did a while ago to move to 2.5. And then we had these outbreaks here, though. I wouldn't call it an outbreak here at Bailey Chase, but we did have some positive cases. And so the task force decided that we're going to hold off right now until you're over that. And so now I think we're over that. And so I'm already advocating that we can move to that, to 2.5. So, okay, any other additional questions or comments? Well, thank you, everybody. God bless you.